Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ninja in Jujutsu Kaisen. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 161, Speedrun begins. Naoya's breathing stagnated, and he looked at Maki in front of him with horror. At this moment, he actually saw the shadow of Toji in Maki. He actually saw the image of his most admired idol and his most despised, worthless cousin. He was extremely angry and said unwillingly, "You fake." Before Naoya could finish his words, he felt something in his abdomen. Bang! The excruciating pain nearly made him faint. At the same time, the terrifying impact force sent him flying into the air. Projection. Before he could finish his words, he felt a sharp pain on his left cheek. Maki instantly appeared above him and threw a heavy punch, which distorted Naoya's face. Several of Naoya's teeth were broken by that punch. Boom! Naoya fell to the ground like a missile, creating a huge crater in the ground beneath his feet. Maki said, "Fake? In the past, my dream target was indeed Toji. But now, if I can't surpass him, how can I repay his kindness?" These extremely calm words almost made Naoya spit out blood again. "You." The words that he wanted to use to retort were stuck in his mouth. He knew that he had completely lost to that powerless piece of trash whom he had never looked up to before. Now Maki was not far behind that man in terms of speed and strength. Add to that the never-before-seen technique, which was even more advanced than before, it was possible to surpass Toji. This was something he had to admit. When death was approaching, besides the endless unwillingness, there was one thing that made him extremely confused. "Who taught you the technique you just performed?" Facing Naoya's question before his death, Maki slowly uttered, "Kazuma. What he taught me is far more than just a simple technique." Looking at Naoya, who was dying at her feet, Maki looked at Kazuma, who was smiling at her in the distance, with soft eyes. At this moment, she truly understood. The one that brought about her transformation was not the heavenly restriction, nor the 8 inner gates, but Kazuma. Without him, she would probably still be a useless person, someone who trained relentlessly but couldn't even become a third-grade sorcerer. It would have been even more impossible for her to break free from her inner demons, escape her shackles, and trample Naoya, the one who had once looked down on her and her sister, under her feet. Ha ha ha. The moment he heard this name, Naoya suddenly laughed like a madman. He didn't care at all, even as blood gushed from the corner of his mouth. Kazuma. It's Kazuma again. If Kazuma hadn't taught Maki that strange technique, who knew who would have one? Naoya stared at Maki and Kazuma with bloodshot eyes, and an extremely ferocious expression flashed across his face. He saw that Kazuma and Panda were looking at him with contempt. Panda even raised 2 middle fingers in a mean manner. Naoya couldn't bear it any longer and spat out a large mouthful of blood in anger. A cold feeling of death swept over his body, and his vision gradually blurred. Naoya felt that his eyelids had become heavy as if they were filled with lead. Maki was still looking down at him with that same unrelenting contempt. Endless anger and unwillingness arose within him. Maki. Kazuma. Death. 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 Even if I become a cursed spirit, I will never let you go. After making his final cry in his heart, Naoya opened his eyes wide and died completely, filled with endless reluctance. Looking at Naoya with his head tilted and pupils dilated, Maki lowered her head and said nothing. But her trembling hands could hardly conceal the excitement in her heart at this moment. At this moment, the dark feelings that had accumulated in her heart for more than 10 years completely dissipated. After a few seconds, Maki slowly raised her head and looked at her sister, Mai, whose eyes were already red. "Mai, are the bullets ready? I'll take you to kill someone." Soon after, shrill cries were heard from the entire residence of the Zenin clan. Screams and pleas for mercy cast a shadow over the Zenin clan. Those clan members who had mocked and insulted the 2 sisters all died in remorse and begging for mercy. "Mother, why did you think it was a shame to give birth to me and Mai?" Why did you repeatedly protect that father who would kill his own flesh and blood without hesitation? Even a tiger wouldn't eat its own cubs. Bang! The sudden gunshot startled Panda, who was watching the commotion from outside the door. He gulped and mechanically turned his head to look at Kazuma. This is really an unprecedented event. After today, the Zenin clan will probably exist in name only. Not long after, the screams from the Zenin clan stopped. Looking at the dilapidated buildings around him and the broken limbs scattered all over the ground, Kazuma couldn't help but sigh. The Zenin clan really played a good hand badly. Toji killed half, Maki killed the other half. Wow! He felt sorry for Megumi for a second. At that moment, a report was heard throughout Tokyo. Participant Jogo has added an additional rule. Remove restrictions on the sorcerer Kazuma from entering the culling game. Hearing this, Kazuma was stunned. He hadn't expected Jogo and the others to be so quick. They collected 100 points in such a short time? Suddenly, golden light flashed inside Kazuma's body. A cute little golden bug flew out of his body. A light screen that only he could see appeared in front of Kazuma. Name, Kazuma. Points, 0. Looking at the basic information about himself on the panel, Kazuma knew that he had become a participant in the culling game. This little golden bug actually has such magical functions, it's practically a low-profile version of a system. He wondered how Kenjaku had made this little thing. He can also hear this report, right? Kazuma wondered what expression had appeared on Kenjaku's face when he heard the name of his old friend Jogo. Yaga and Panda also showed joy on their faces. Panda said, "Great! Now Kazuma can also enter the barrier and participate in the culling game." Yaga said, "Kazuma, please help unseal Gojo. If possible, please take care of my students." Kazuma nodded. Culling game speedrun begins. In order to quickly gain points, should he go to Sendai to snatch Yuta's points first, or should he challenge Kashimo directly? After all, that battle fanatic should have accumulated a lot of points by now, right? Chapter 162, Exhilarated Jogo. Just as Kazuma was thinking, Maki supported Mai and slowly walked out the door. The two sisters looked at each other and said at the same time, "Thank you, Kazuma. I really don't know how to repay you." Panda winked and joked, "I think it would be better if you two sisters just gave your bodies to Kazuma." He was only halfway through his words when he was violently slapped in the back by Yaga. Yaga said, "Now is the time when Kazuma is needed. Let's wait until everything is over before we talk about this idiot." Ahem. Kazuma gave a knowing look to Panda and then said to the Maki sisters seriously, "Did you kill her too?" Maki knew that Kazuma was referring to their mother, and she shook her head and explained, "No, that shot was just a final farewell between my sister and me in the past." Didn't kill? This surprised him a little. According to the original plot, Maki would cut her mother's throat. At the last moment of her life, her mother gave the dying Naoya a final blow, ending his tragic and unbearable life. It seemed that Maki had not completely lost herself. Their mother was different from Oji. In the end, she was just another tragic woman bound by the constraints of family values. Now, this was actually the best outcome. Okay, now that I can participate in the culling game, I will go first. After saying that, Kazuma instantly disappeared into the vortex. Panda looked at Maki with some fear and said weakly, Maki, how about you take care of your wounds first, and then we can enter the other barriers together." At the same time, on the rooftop of the tallest skyscraper inside the barrier, the fighting below continued endlessly, but Kenjaku didn't care about the situation at all. For once, his usually calm and composed expression wavered. He widened his eyes slightly, staring at the rule panel projected by the little golden bug in shock. Jogo? The one who had added the rule allowing Kazuma to enter the culling game, was actually Jogo? How was that possible? Wasn't that idiot burned to ashes by Kazuma's black flames? Beside him, a white-haired figure in monk's robes, Yuram, frowned. What's going on? Wasn't that grumpy volcano head dead? She had seen with her own eyes that Jogo was reduced to nothing. And yet, here he was, influencing the culling game? What's even more baffling was that he seemed to be helping Jujutsu High. Kenjaku's fingers continued scrolling down the list of participants inside the barrier. The more he read, the more his expression darkened. Jogo, Mahito, Hanami, Dagon. Wait. Even Fushiguro Toji? The deeper he looked, the more unsettled he became. Something was seriously wrong. The sorcerers from 1,000 years ago had been revived because they had signed contracts with him, paying the necessary price. But what about Jogo and the others? Even a sorcerer like Toji, dead for over a decade, had returned? Had some kind of malfunction occurred when activating the culling game? Kenjaku quickly searched his memory for answers, but found nothing. This is getting more and more interesting. Yuram shot him a cold look and asked, "Hey, are those 4 friends or enemies now?" Kenjaku didn't answer right away. Instead, he let out a sigh and smirked. He said, "So this is what betrayal feels like? It's quite unpleasant." It was clear to him now. The old allies who had suddenly resurrected were most likely enemies now. He even suspected that Jogo and the others had been revived under the control of the higher-ups at Jujutsu High. But who in Jujutsu High had the power to pull the dead back from hell? Could it be Tengen? Yes. Only an old relic like him could have mastered such a technique. Yuram, locate Megumi. I have something important to take care of. Yuram raised an eyebrow and said, "What?" Kenjaku's smirk widened and he said, "Assimilating Tengen." Most of Jujutsu High's forces were now tied up with the culling game, and Kazuma would be heading there soon. With Jogo and the others aiding Jujutsu High, the chances of manipulating the rules to eliminate Kazuma were slim. After all, he was well aware of the strength of the 4 disaster curses. Not to mention Toji, who had once almost succeeded in assassinating Gojo. But with those forces and now Kazuma entering the fray, this culling game would soon become Kazuma's playground. "So, you're leaving the mess to me?" Yuram frowned. At this rate, Gojo would be unsealed soon. What role could she even play here? Kenjaku cursed inwardly. This fool only cares about Sukuna. But outwardly, he gave a pleasant smile and said, "It's simple. Force Megumi into a corner. Then, he'll inevitably summon Maharaga. Your Sukuna-sama will sense it and take action. The initiative has always been in our hands." At the mention of Sukuna, Yuram's expression shifted. She knew exactly what Kenjaku meant. The key was Megumi's sister, Sumiki. Tombs of Star Corridor. "Tengen, are you ready to welcome me?" A vortex appeared behind Kenjaku. After flashing a parting smirk at Yuram, he disappeared. At the same time, at the Sendai colony. "Oh who?" A strange cry echoed in the sky. Jogo descended, flames swirling in his palms. Boom! Several sorcerers below were instantly reduced to ashes. "Jogo! Watch out, don't burn your own people." Mahito, whose robes had caught on flames, hopped away, trying to pat out the flames. Hanami, standing with arms crossed, used his wooden limbs to ensnare a fleeing sorcerer. He glanced at Jogo, who was laughing maniacally above them, and scoffed. Hanami said, "Idiot. Don't forget we're working for our former enemies now." Jogo said, "He. Sorry, I just haven't had this much fun in a long time." Jogo took a deep puff of his pipe, looking smug. He had finally figured it out. He would never again challenge someone like Gojo or Kazuma. As long as he avoided those monsters, he was still top tier. After dying once, he had learned one thing: don't be stubborn. Never play in a match against those monsters at the top again. Suddenly, shing! A flash of light appeared. Slice! Everything in the Blade's Path buildings, cursed spirits, and all, was severed in two. Toji moved at lightning speed, pinning a massive curse to the ground. His voice was cold and emotionless. "Where is Megumi?" "And no. I don't know." Slash. Before he could finish, he was cut to pieces. Purple blood splattered the ground. Jogo clicked his tongue and said, "TSK, what a rude guy." If we're talking about workaholics, this guy definitely tops the list. Chapter 163, Disaster Curses Against Kenjaku. Who is this person? He doesn't have any cursed energy fluctuations on his body, yet he can reach the speed of sound with just his physical strength? Jogo looked at Toji's back with curiosity. Every movement the man made exuded an invisible sense of oppression. If he fights him, can he win? What kind of monster did Kazuma summon? At this moment, terrifying waves of cursed energy blanketed the entire sky above this barrier. Far away, a cannon made of pure cursed energy suddenly fired. Boom! The devastating blast instantly razed all the buildings in its path to the ground. At the last second, Jogo and the others pulled back, narrowly escaping annihilation. As Jogo took in the massive trench left in the earth, excitement flashed in his eyes. Such a powerful cursed energy output. I didn't expect there to be such a strong opponent here. A figure suddenly came hurtling through the air in retreat. Yuta stabbed his katana into the ground, sparks flying as he slid back, barely managing to stop himself. "Hey, kid, need a hand?" Jogo grinned, eager for a fight. "Ah, it's Cursed Spirit-san. Sorry for the commotion." Yuta scratched his head awkwardly. At any other time, he'd have cut these special-grade curses down without hesitation. But for now, they were temporary allies. "Stay back, those three are incredibly strong." Yuta stretched his shoulders and stared ahead, his expression grave. Even from miles away, he could feel their overwhelming presence. He had narrowly escaped death several times already. The three ancient sorcerers from centuries past were proving to be the toughest opponents he'd ever faced. Of course, this was without Rika's help. In a church not far from the battlefield, he had found a group of civilians, and Rika was guarding them. Otherwise, just the aftermath of this battle would be enough to wipe those civilians out. At that moment, a familiar voice called out behind him. "Leave it to me." Everyone turned. Kazuma approached, idly twirling the prison realm that held Gojo in his hand. Yuta's mouth twitched and he said, "Kazuma, if you keep tossing that around like a toy, won't Gojo get dizzy in there?" "He won't." Kazuma reached the group, completely unfazed. After all, the prison realm was its own isolated space. Solidified time and space meant Gojo wouldn't feel a thing. "Jogo, you guys did well. Head back to the Tombs of Star Corridor. And remind Yuki not to listen to that old fool, Tengen." Kazuma still didn't understand what real use Tengen had beyond maintaining the barrier. His only real contribution seemed to be getting Yuki killed. As a special-grade sorcerer, Yuki had enough power to manifest an imaginary black hole, potentially capable of wiping out an entire country in an instant. With no upper limit to her technique, she should have been nearly unstoppable. Yet she followed Tengen's strategy, leading to a fatal blunder. She hadn't even been able to use her domain before being slaughtered by Kenjaku. The first one to die, all thanks to Tengen's wisdom. And what about Choso? Tengen had sent him to test Kenjaku's abilities right at the start, which led to Choso getting beaten half to death without gaining any useful intel. A powerful ally was wasted. Sure, Kenjaku was undeniably strong, but Tengen had been too cowardly. Not only did he overestimate Kenjaku, but he also underestimated Yuki. If she and Choso had worked together from the start, the battle's outcome could have been completely different. At the very least, they could have escaped. And as for Tengen? Well, getting assimilated was probably his fate anyway. It wasn't like Kenjaku lasted much longer. He got taken out by Yuta in a sneak attack right after. What a waste of time. But then again, if the four disaster curses go back to the Tombs of Star Corridor now, they might have a chance against Kenjaku. Maybe they could even bury him there. Ah? Why are we going back? I'm not done killing yet. Jogo complained. He was itching to trade blows with those powerful opponents. Of the four disaster curses, Jogo was by far the most battle-hungry. Kazuma smirked and said, "Just go. There's a surprise waiting for you in the Tombs of Star Corridor. Wouldn't beating up Kenjaku be more fun than fighting someone on your level? This is a rare opportunity. If you miss it, it'll be gone." Everyone except Toji, who remained disinterested, looked shocked. Yuta's eyes widened and he said, "Wait, you mean Kenjaku is going to the Tombs of Star Corridor? He actually dares to attack Tengen?" Yuta quickly pieced it together. Kenjaku was too ambitious. He was actually aiming for Tengen? And the Tombs of Star Corridor was still being guarded by Yuki and Choso. So why was Kazuma sending the 4 disaster curses back? Yuta wasn't sure of Choso's full strength, but he knew exactly how powerful Yuki was. She was a veteran special-grade sorcerer. And so far, she had never revealed the full extent of her abilities. Jogo and the others stood frozen. Beat up Kenjaku? It was a tempting idea, but Jogo huffed stubbornly. "Don't think you can manipulate us. We, the 4 disaster curses, will never betray our former allies." Hanami, Dagon, and Choso also nodded firmly. Kazuma chuckled and said, "Allies? You were just disposable pawns to him. Do you really think he saw you as partners? Or do you just not want to think about it? Take Hanami, for example. When Gojo crushed him at the subway station, did Kenjaku even flinch? He was watching from the tracks just a short distance away. If he had wanted to, he could have intervened at any time." Kazuma then turned to Mahito and said, "And you? Kenjaku has been eyeing your idol transfiguration for a long time, hasn't he? If you had been near death, do you really think he would have saved you? Or would he have just harvested you?" A heavy silence fell. Jogo and the others stiffened, their expressions darkening. They hated to admit it, but Kazuma had a point. Kenjaku always had excuses, claiming Gojo was watching, claiming the timing wasn't right. Yet in the end, they were always the ones taking the risks. The 4 disaster curses prided themselves on loyalty, but they weren't stupid. Kazuma knew far too much about them. Thinking back to the Shibuya incident, every move had been under his control. Nanami had nearly died, Nobara had almost been crushed, yet Kazuma had intervened at the last second each time. Was the entire Shibuya incident orchestrated by him? But how? As they met Kazuma's knowing gaze, a chill ran down their spines. It was as if he had been playing with the world the entire time. Could that be possible? Jogo took a deep breath and spoke in a low voice. "Is this the kind of psychological trickery you humans use to manipulate others?" Kazuma didn't even try to deny it and said, "Of course. But think about it. You were used as pawns in life. Do you really want to be pawns in death too? Are the 4 disaster curses going to let their legacy become a joke? Enough. We're leaving." The 4 disaster curses couldn't hold back any longer. Jogo's flames flared violently as he growled, "I've wanted to beat the crap out of that smug, squinty-eyed bastard for so long." Chapter 164, A Barrage of Points. Looking at the figures of Jogo and the others leaving, Yuta said enviously, "Dead people have it good. They are not restricted and can come and go freely. Even someone as strong as him, from the moment he stepped into the barrier, couldn't leave. Every second in the culling game is filled with fighting, and most of the participants who have been reborn are killing each other for points." Kazuma smiled in his heart. In the state of Edo Tensei, they are indeed not affected by the rules. "I'm going to find Megumi." Toji, who was wearing a black tight-fitting top, glanced at Kazuma lightly and disappeared in an instant. According to his warlike genes, Toji would never miss this opportunity to hunt a strong man. However, the future fate of his son Megumi was still vivid in his mind. He would never allow this to happen. Yuta stared at the direction where Toji had left with an unfriendly look. He said, "He is Megumi's biological father? And he even cares about his son's safety?" Then he changed the subject. "He is the assassin who attacked Gojo-sensei during the astral plasma vessel incident, right?" Yuta secretly clenched his fists. If possible, he really wanted to beat up Toji. In order to pay off his debts, he even sold his own child to the Zenin clan, and he even assassinated the astral plasma vessel without hesitation for the bounty. You know, back then, the astral plasma vessel was extremely important to the entire world of Jujutsu. In his eyes, Toji was nothing but an out-and-out profiteer. Fortunately, Megumi is completely different from him. Kazuma nodded slightly and said, Toji is pretty inhumane, but thankfully, Maki is nothing like him. She is humane. But then again, considering the time, Megumi and Yuji should have successfully invited Hikari by now. He won't know Megumi's exact location unless he spends 100 points to add a rule that shows his location. Kazuma said, Yuta, that terrifying attack just now should have been launched by a sorcerer with a cannon-shaped hairstyle, right? Yuta said, eh? How do you know? Although that guy's total amount of cursed energy is not as good as mine, his cursed energy output is actually slightly better than mine. Yuta looked into the distance with a serious expression and said, besides, there are 3 more enemies who are just as powerful as him. 3? It seems that he has arrived in time, and the old man Druvlak has not been killed by Yuta yet. Immediately, his mind moved, and the little golden bug instantly appeared before his eyes, projecting a curtain of light. Druvlak 99 points. Ishigori Ryu, 77 points. Takako Yuro, 75 points. Kurorushi, 54 points. This is the convenience of the little goldworm Shikigami. All players who are in the game can use it to quickly check the points ranking. The one at the top of the list right now is the strongest sorcerer from 400 years ago, Hajime Kashimo. He has 200 points. Kazuma has just entered the culling game, and his point balance is 0. In that case, let's start with these 4. Ahem, Yuta, go and protect the ordinary people in the building with Rika, and leave these 4 to me. Ah? You want to fight those 4 alone? The surprised Yuta. He looked at Kazuma in disbelief and said in a serious tone, Kazuma, think carefully, those 4 are all super powerful beings. Especially the sorcerer who controls the sky, she is simply impossible to guard against. Although this is essentially a game, if you die accidentally, you will really die. The battle between the special grades is far more terrifying than imagined. If there is even the slightest mistake, it will be fatal. If this is the case with just one person, what about fighting against 4 at the same time? Controlling space? What a coincidence. I'm also good at this. I wonder who's better at it. Kazuma's mouth curled up slightly, and a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. How about this, you go and hold back the cockroach monster and Druvlak, and leave the other 2 to me. We'll each have 2, and divide them fairly. Yuta's mouth twitched, and he complained madly in his heart. Did he even hear the space control he just said? It's a fair distribution? Do you think it's a game of head-grabbing? The opponent is a powerful special grade sorcerer, not a lamb to be slaughtered. But this is fine, he will deal with the opponent as soon as possible, and then go to help Kazuma immediately. Thinking of this, Yuta said in a heavy tone, well, please hold the other 2 back. I will deal with them as soon as possible. Kazuma slowly opened his eyes, and the Rinnegan in his left eye switched to Eternal Mangekyo. He hasn't used Kamui's offensive ability for a long time. He missed the days when he would twist his opponent's head with Kamui. The most important thing is that he wants to compete with that Takako Yuro in spatial ability. The invisible pressure of the cursed energy caused many weak sorcerers and cursed spirits to stop fighting and hide everywhere. On top of a skyscraper. Haha, interesting. He took my attack head-on and didn't die? Ishigori Ryu was lying leisurely on the edge of the roof, with half of his body almost hanging in the air and ready to fall at any time. Looking at the panel projected by the little golden bug in front of him, he shook off the cigarette ash slightly. If that brat dares to come and disrupt the situation again, I will blast him into pieces. As he said this, he looked towards the tall building opposite with a serious look. There, sitting cross-legged was an old man wearing tattered robes, with a deathly face and a skinny body. There seemed to be golden light in his turbid eyes, and he was constantly observing the situation around him. On the left side of the tall building, a thin, scantily dressed blonde woman is hanging upside down in the air with her arms folded across her chest. She looked at the distance with interest. Takako Yuro, once the captain of the Sun Moonstar team. Her extremely sharp intuition made her feel an extremely strong threat. This threat was not brought by the boy who was blown away before, but had appeared suddenly. With a thought, the little golden bug projected a light screen. After checking it out, the corners of her mouth slightly curved. Kazuma? Is he the one who brought this invisible sense of oppression? This made her both nervous and excited. In a dim room in the building on the right, a cursed spirit that was wrapped in black air and looked like a cockroach slowly opened its eyes. It is the most special existence in the culling game, released by Kenjaku. This strange coincidence made them suspect that all this was done intentionally by Kenjaku. Chapter 165, 1 vs 2. The food is coming. Hoarse and low words came from Kuroroshi's mouth. Ryu Ishigori, Dhruv Lakdawala, and Takako Yuro all turned their attention in the same direction at the same moment. Kazuma and Yuta stood side by side on an abandoned balcony, feeling the presence of the four figures atop the skyscraper. A rocket-haired man, a giant cockroach, an old man, and a blonde woman dressed a little too boldly? Yuta asked seriously, they're the people who signed a contract with Kenjaku hundreds of years ago, right? Ryu Ishigori casually took out a comb and smoothed the rocket on his head, laughing disdainfully. What, you already found backup? Do you think that will help you win? If you want to take points from me, you'll pay a heavy price. But Yuta completely ignored Ryu Ishigori's provocation and instead focused on assigning opponents with Kazuma. Yuta pointed at Ryu Ishigori and the other three. He said, same as before. I'll handle the old man and the cockroach monster. Kazuma nodded in agreement and said, then the rocket head and cool girl are mine. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted from Kuroroshi, instantly collapsing the building it stood on. Flapping its wings, it hovered mid-air, its mouth moving. Cockroach monster? Good. Very good. For centuries, I've devoured anyone who dared to call me that. And you will be the next feast for my offspring. On the rooftop, Dhruv Lakdawala still sat in meditation, unfazed by Yuta's words. His expression remained unchanged. Takako Yuro suddenly let out a ghostly laugh and said, he who knew you two little boys had such an appetite? You actually think so little of me? I won't show any mercy. Even as she spoke, a fire raged inside her. Cool girl? What do these two brats know? How dare they speak so rudely? Who gave them the confidence to take on two opponents each? She was the captain of the Sun Moonstar team, revered and feared. When had she ever been taunted like this? It was always her looking down on enemies, not the other way around. Ryu Ishigori glanced at everyone with disdain and spoke with the pride of someone at the top, I only fight the strongest. Only those who survive are worthy of my attention. Remember, you are the challengers. Swish! Without hesitation, the cold and taciturn Yuta charged forward, blade in hand. In an instant, he was in the sky. His sword was aimed straight at Dhruv Lakdawala, who had remained silent this entire time. Feeling the massive cursed energy surging from the blade, the old man slowly opened his eyes. A flicker of surprise crossed his usually unreadable face. At the same time, Kazuma flung an iron dagger. Ryu Ishigori scoffed at the incoming weapon, making no attempt to dodge. He had already analyzed the composition of the dagger the moment Kazuma had thrown it. This scrap metal doesn't even qualify as a cursed tool. You really think this can hurt me? Smirking, he casually pulled a hand from his pocket and raised two fingers, preparing to catch the dagger midair. It's too slow. Before he could finish speaking, Kazuma, who had been standing far away on the balcony, vanished. The dagger suddenly sparked with golden lightning, just as it was snatched by a large hand. Raikiri! A cold voice whispered from behind his ear. Bang! Sizzle! Ryu Ishigori had no time to react. His eyes widened as a sharp pain shot across his right cheek. An electric current paralyzed his entire face, and the sheer force sent him flying like a cannonball. With one precise move, Kazuma had used Flying Thunder God to knock Ryu Ishigori away. A seamless combination of techniques, executed in an instant. It was as fast as lightning. Kazuma couldn't think of any way to evade it other than Kamui. This scene completely stunned Takako Yuro, who was still hanging upside down in midair. Her eyes widened as realization dawned. Then, excitement flashed in them. So fast. What kind of technique was that? Faster than lightning? Was it teleportation? A moment ago, she had been furious. Now, she was thrilled. As a battle maniac, beyond collecting points and reviving, her only desire was to fight the strong. Having slaughtered countless sorcerers before, she believed modern sorcerers were weak, far inferior to those from her era 100 years ago. But now, her opinion had changed. Doesn't your head get congested hanging upside down like that? Kazuma tapped his temple, smirking. Honestly, this kind of upside-down stance only suited Gojo. If he added, "I am the strongest," it would be even more fitting. His single comment reignited Takako Yuro's fury. Congestion? I'm going to tear your mouth apart. She let out a piercing screech and lunged at Kazuma. The strongest assassin in history cared nothing for fairness. Her style was swift, accurate, and deadly. Her only goal was to twist off his head. The space in front of Kazuma suddenly distorted, as if reality itself had wrinkled like a broken mirror. In the next instant, Takako Yuro's attack appeared directly in front of him. Crack! The sound of glass shattering echoed. A terrifying force exploded, ripping the space apart. The immense pressure devoured Kazuma in an instant. Yuta, still clashing with Dhruv Lakdawala, turned his eyes to Kazuma's position in shock. That attack had warped the entire rooftop where Kazuma stood. The sheer force compressed the dust into a solid mass, completely covering the area. Despite being in the heat of battle, Yuta's combat instincts kept him aware of the battlefield at all times. Takako Yuro's technique was too strange. There had been no warning before the space had twisted. Could Kazuma have dodged in time? Ahem! A figure emerged from the smoke. Standing unharmed in the deep pit created by the attack, Kazuma casually waved his hand to clear the dust. Not bad. A two-dimensional spatial distortion technique. As the smoke cleared, Kazuma appeared in full view, completely unscathed. How? He was totally fine? Even his clothes weren't torn. No matter how strong a sorcerer was, taking that attack head-on and remaining unhurt should have been impossible. But she was sure that Kazuma hadn't dodged. Takako Yuro stared down at him in disbelief. What the hell just happened? Chapter 166, Space vs. Space. This scene was also seen by Ryu Ishigori, who had returned to the battlefield. Oh. Interesting, he survived that attack intact? Even he wasn't sure he could have taken that hit head-on. At this moment, the left side of his face was red and swollen, and his nose was slightly crooked. He looked a bit miserable, but the signature rocket hairstyle on his head remained unchanged. Ishigori casually placed his hands in his pockets and leaped to the top of the skyscraper, forming a pincer attack with Takako against Kazuma. His intense gaze locked onto Kazuma, his brain analyzing rapidly. Could it be that this guy's technique allows him to swap positions with his weapon? And instantly, at that? The punch earlier was too fast even for someone of his strength. It had caught him off guard. Fortunately, his combat instincts had kicked in, allowing him to mobilize his cursed energy for defense in time. Otherwise, it wouldn't have just been some flesh wounds. In 400 years, this was the first time someone had made him feel pressured. You're quite shameless. Kazuma glanced at Ishigori behind him. Then, he looked up at Takako in the sky, a look of disbelief crossing his face. She casually lifted her bangs, her lips curving slightly. You're pretty good at using spatial abilities. Unfortunately, I seem to be able to do the same. Just as she finished speaking, the Mangekyo pattern in Kazuma's left eye rotated, locking onto its target. Kamui. Behind Takako's head, space twisted, forming a strange vortex. Takako's eyes widened in alarm, every hair on her body standing on end. A strong sense of death swept over her, and at the critical moment, she swiftly raised her hand, manipulating the surrounding sky. Snap! Space twisted and detonated. Takako's ears were contorted like twisted noodles. Then, an irresistible force ripped them off. What? Feeling the searing pain and blood gushing from her wounds, she immediately retreated hundreds of meters, her gaze locked onto Kazuma in utter disbelief. He also knows spatial techniques? And worse, his attacks had no warning signs before launching. If she hadn't forcibly deflected the attack's trajectory just now, she'd be dead. She'd have become a headless corpse. Too strange. Attacks without any warning. Could it be that his control over space is better than hers? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Takako might not be the strongest in the entire Jujutsu world, but when it came to space, no one understood it better than her. On the other side, Dhruv and Kurorushi, who were fighting against Yuta, were also stunned by this scene. Even they were terrified of Takako's abilities, especially her deadly space-based techniques. But now, she had actually lost in a battle of space manipulation? As the two reeled from shock, Yuta's katana struck. The overwhelming pressure of cursed energy pierced through their defenses. Kurorushi cursed internally. Who the hell are these two? Each one is more monstrous than the last. Dhruv, are you still going to keep holding back? Kurorushi spat. Oof. I don't need you, accursed spirit, telling me what to do. Despite saying that, Dhruv subtly strengthened his offensive. Takako, a battle-hardened warrior from a century ago, quickly adapted after analyzing the situation. Almost instantly, she appeared in front of Kazuma, initiating close combat. Close-quarters combat was her specialty. As an assassination master, every one of her strikes targeted vital points, each one meant to kill. Ishigori, still standing motionless on the rooftop, observed the battle closely. His expression shifted from initial disdain to seriousness. The cursed energy within him suddenly gathered at the top of his head. Takako's fist smashed down towards Kazuma's head. The space in front of Kazuma twisted and then suddenly exploded. But Kazuma's figure blurred for a split second, and remained completely unharmed. What? Just as Takako's eyes widened in shock, Kazuma's counterattack was already in motion. Listen to me, space is too complicated for you to grasp. However, Kazuma's Kamui attack, which should have landed perfectly, missed. He raised an eyebrow, quickly realizing the reason. Takako had once again altered the sky. The distortion had shifted her position, causing a visual misalignment. It seemed like he had locked onto her head, but in reality, his target had been shifted away. The next second, Takako grinned, clenched her fists, and suddenly exerted force. Whoosh! She dragged the space in front of her toward Kazuma, as if pulling a bedsheet. When it comes to space, no one is stronger than me. Kazuma, suddenly yanked into close range, felt his right arm grotesquely twist by the space distortion. His limb now resembled a warped noodle. However, Kazuma remained completely unfazed. Because he knew that he was in the Kamui dimension and not in the real world. The only reason his arm appeared distorted was purely a visual trick caused by space warping. With his Kamui, as long as he didn't actively attack, he was untouchable. However, Takako had no intention of attacking directly. Instead, she suddenly shouted. Rocket head! How long are you going to wait? Despite their pride, none of the four were fools. Kazuma and Yuta's strength was beyond what they had expected. If they continued fighting alone, they'd be picked off one by one. Ugh, how annoying. A calm voice echoed from behind. Kazuma noticed Takako's pupils contract. A blinding white light suddenly burst forth behind him. Granite blast. Ishigori, who had been biding his time, refused to admit Kazuma's strength. But for the sake of the battle's outcome, he seized this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A devastating shockwave of cursed energy erupted from the top of his head. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded. A dazzling shockwave ripped through the battlefield. Like a dam breaking, it devoured everything in its path, obliterating entire buildings. In an instant, it was right behind Kazuma. Kazuma! Watch your back! Yuta, who was holding off Kurorushi and Druve, felt the monstrous attack and immediately called out. Yet, Kazuma remained unmoved. He turned to Takako, smiling. Kamui. As soon as he spoke, Kazuma vanished into a swirling vortex. Where did he go? Takako was horrified. But she had no time to think because the cursed energy cannon was now hurtling straight toward her. Damn it! She ripped a chunk of sky itself and threw it up as a shield. Chapter 167, Rasengan or Hollow Purple? Boom! The terrifying shock wave carried scorching heat and instantly engulfed Takako. Even though she had wrapped the sky around her in advance for defense, it barely had any effect. Takako flew backward like a kite with its string cut, a look of confusion still in her eyes. Why? How did Kazuma disappear into that twisted black hole? This bizarre scene completely shattered her understanding of space. She simply couldn't accept it. If that was the case, then his technique was too unfair, wasn't it? Fight if he wanted to, escape if he wanted to, and no one could stop him? The only way to beat him would be to set a trap and land an instant kill, but the chances of that happening were slim. Looking at Takako, whose arm was destroyed in the ruins, Ishigori wasn't happy about the loss of a competitor. Instead, he kept scanning the battlefield, searching for Kazuma's whereabouts. His cursed energy cannon had actually missed. A long-lost fighting spirit ignited in Ishigori's eyes. Come out, you little brat who can only hide, and let me feast on you. The next second, the space behind him twisted. A whirlpool appeared, and in the darkness, a pair of large hands reached out without warning, lifting Ishigori high into the air. Before he could react, a deep voice murmured in his ear. As you wish. Whoosh! Kazuma suddenly exerted force, throwing Ishigori into the sky like a shot put. Not very skilled, are you? Ishigori still had a crazed smile on his face as he soared through the air, a cursed energy cannon forming above his head, ready to fire. The moment Kazuma had grabbed him from behind, he had already begun secretly gathering cursed energy. Granite blast! Boom! Though this shock wave was weaker than before, its trajectory could be controlled. Ishigori locked onto Kazuma, relentlessly chasing him with his cursed energy cannon. Like a laser beam, the attack sliced through the surrounding skyscrapers, cutting them in half. However, in the very next second, Kazuma suddenly transformed into a flash of lightning, moving 100 meters in an instant. Seeing this, Ishigori redirected his cannon, the shockwave following closely. Kazuma's figure flickered again and again, but Ishigori's shockwaves never hit him. He couldn't even graze Kazuma's clothes. Ishigori's eyes burned with fury. He could tell that Kazuma was deliberately toying with him. Is dodging all you can do? You might as well keep hiding in your space. Just as he finished speaking, Kazuma, who had been standing on the ruins below, suddenly vanished from sight. Huh? Where did he go? Did he really escape into another dimension? No, even the slightest spatial fluctuation wouldn't escape his sharp senses. There was only one possibility. Can you catch this? A voice whispered from behind. Ishigori's pupils shrank. Turning his head mechanically, he looked behind him. What he saw made his breath hitch. Kazuma was floating above him. He was using one hand to grip a massive energy sphere, as large as a skyscraper. Didn't you say you wanted a feast? I'll serve you a Rasengan. Boom! Kazuma hurled the colossal energy sphere with full force, engulfing Ishigori completely. The dazzling light was so blinding that Ishigori couldn't keep his eyes open. The sheer force of the attack sent out violent shockwaves, the sheer pressure stung Ishigori's face even before impact. Everything in Ishigori's vision was now completely consumed by the Rasengan. As it bore down on him, in his last moments of consciousness, only one thought remained in Ishigori's mind. What the hell is a Rasengan? Meanwhile, across the Sendai colony, many sorcerers and cursed spirits hid in corners, trembling. The previous battle between the 6 special grades had already filled them with fear. So much so that they had abandoned their fights, choosing instead to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. But now, seeing the colossal energy sphere in the sky, they were completely stunned. What the hell is that? Are my eyes deceiving me? Don't tell me that's a cursed technique? If that thing drops, half the city will be wiped out. Run! If we're even a second late, the shockwave alone could kill us. Damn it! These special grade guys are beyond insane. They fight like they don't care about the world at all. Yeah, someone should seriously call them out for this. Not far away, a mountain of cursed spirit corpses lay piled up. A lone figure stood there, staring at the massive energy ball in the sky with a grave expression. It was Toji. There was only one person capable of creating something like that. Kazuma. This energy sphere, it reminded him of something from his past. A bad memory. Toji clenched his fists and muttered darkly, between this and Gojo's hollow purple, which one is stronger? Boom! As the Rasengan made impact, the battlefield was engulfed in a blinding white light. Everyone instinctively shielded their eyes, unable to look directly at the explosion. The sheer force of the attack was like a giant missile, flattening the surrounding area instantly. The skyscraper that stood seconds ago, gone. All that remained in the heart of the city was a gargantuan crater. Ishigori lay in the pit, covered in blood, staring blankly at Kazuma floating above. So many sorcerers, so many powerhouses in this world. He had always prided himself as the one with the strongest cursed energy output in existence. But what did that even mean in the face of that move? He had lost. And he lost in the very domain he prided himself on: cursed energy output. As a special grade sorcerer, he could tell that Kazuma's attack wasn't simply a product of raw power. On the contrary, it wasn't an overwhelming amount of cursed energy, but rather, an extreme compression of it. To be able to condense and compress such an enormous energy sphere in such a short amount of time. Kazuma's strength had surpassed the special grade level. Realizing this, Ishigori suddenly smiled. 400 years ago, he had signed a contract with Kenjaku, choosing to be resurrected today. His only desire was to find a worthy opponent, someone to fight at full power. Back then, he had missed his chance to battle the legend Kashimo. But today, Kazuma had fulfilled his wish. This battle had satisfied him. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Kuroroshi's lifeless body lay on the ground, black blood soaking the dirt. Even Yuta and Druve had stopped fighting, stunned by the impact of Kazuma's attack. Lowering his sword, Yuta surveyed the destruction, the vast crater in the battlefield. He fell into deep thought. So strong. And then, a hoarse voice suddenly echoed through the battlefield. Ha ha! Yuta's eyes widened in horror. Kazuma! Behind you! Just then, Kuroroshi, whom Yuta had killed, stood up once more. With a sinister grin, he silently appeared behind Kazuma. His thin, insect-like limbs grasped a terrifying and grotesque cursed tool. The festering life blade. A forbidden weapon that mixes life and death. But Kazuma, already anticipating it, simply smirked. An unkillable little cockroach. I wonder if it can withstand Amaterasu. Chapter 168, Number 1 in points. The terrifying and strange black flame appeared out of nowhere without any warning. The flames spread all over the place in an instant, causing Kuroroshi to let out an extremely miserable roar. As a result, the movement of its hand that was intended to launch a sneak attack was temporarily paused. Seeing this, Kazuma rushed to Kuroroshi's dead body and reached out with one hand. A sharp wooden stick suddenly shot out from the palm of his hand, instantly sending a chill through Kuroroshi's heart, who possessed the body of a special grade cursed spirit. No matter how hard Kuroroshi struggled, it was useless as it was nailed to the wall. It still didn't understand how did Kazuma predict that it would attack him. Clearly, it had faked its own death, which was perfect. It had done so to devour Kazuma's body. That's right, from the moment it had seen Kazuma, it had set his sights on him. The huge amount of energy contained in Kazuma's body made every cell in its body stir. But now, it regretted its actions. For the first time, it, who is said to be immortal, felt the threat of death. The continued burning of Amaterasu's black flames caused its body and soul to suffer extremely painful torture. Moreover, no matter how it struggled, it couldn't extinguish this damn strange flame. The instinct for survival made it frantically produce countless small cockroaches from its lower abdomen, trying to escape. But it was all in vain. Every time a small cockroach appeared, it was instantly swallowed by the black flame. The crackling sound of burning reached everyone's eardrums. From the miserable roar to the weak struggle at the end, everything refreshed everyone's view of Jujutsu. Kurorushi had completely disappeared from the world, but the black marks of the cockroaches' remains on the wall proved that it had existed just now. Kurorushi, who claimed to have an immortal body, was dead, completely dead. In the ruins, Takako, who had slowly woken up, and Ishigori, who was lying in the deep pit, looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. That flame, what on earth was that? It was the first time in their lives that they had seen black flames. Even though they were so far apart, they could still feel the terrifying temperature. The most important thing was that no matter how Kurorushi struggled, and even after it used up all its cards, it couldn't extinguish it. Wait. Isn't Kazuma's cursed technique space manipulation? But what about this black flame? Flame and space have nothing to do with each other, right? Even if it is a derivative, the two can't be derived together, right? The only explanation is that Kazuma has mastered two completely different and powerful curse techniques at the same time. Thinking of this, the two of them couldn't help but take a breath. That kid named Yuta was already very strong. But the helper he found was even more powerful? Are all modern special grade sorcerers so terrifying? Yuta also opened his mouth, with a small and delicate ring fixed on his fingertips. Just now, he had almost wanted to use the ring to directly summon Rika to intercept Kurorushi's sneak attack. But Kazuma's actions left him completely dumbfounded. He realized that his worries were completely unnecessary. He had heard about this black flame from everyone in Jujutsu High before, but seeing it firsthand still shocked him. The flame that never goes out. If I fight Kazuma and he uses this technique, how should I respond? Can my copy technique replicate this move? No. Yuta shook his head suddenly, his firm faith had almost faltered. Although Kazuma's curse technique is powerful, he is not weak either. Even if he wants to copy, he has to get the other party's consent. At this moment, he suddenly sensed a faint fluctuation of cursed energy coming from behind. Yuta suddenly looked back and noticed that Dhruv was running away. Kazuma reminded, that old man has 99 points. Without any hesitation, Yuta whispered his partner's name. Rika, stop him. In the distance, Dhruv, who had already escaped from Kazuma's sight, breathed a sigh of relief. The scene of Kurorushi's tragic death was still vivid in his mind, and that miserable cry kept echoing. This was the first time he had felt the fear of death from another person's body. His precise intuition made him very sure that Kazuma's curse technique was far more than that. Fortunately, the other party had no intention of chasing after him otherwise. Suddenly, a pair of huge pale hands carrying a powerful cursed energy came slapping at him. Bang! The golden barrier he raised barely blocked the sudden attack. When he looked up, he saw a huge, hideous-looking special-grade cursed spirit. The cursed energy contained in it was unprecedentedly huge. It was no exaggeration to describe it as bottomless. Suddenly, poof! Dhruv spurted out a mouthful of blood. With his cloudy eyes wide open, he looked down in confusion at his body pierced by a sharp wooden stick. Death's whispers reached his ears. Kamui! Bang! The space suddenly twisted, and blood splattered. Dhruv felt a chill on his neck and his vision spun. Then, he realized that his head had been separated from his body in an instant. Just hand over the points. If you run, then you can't blame me. At this time, Yuta also rushed over. He was seen holding the seriously injured Ishigori and Takako in each hand. Yuta-kun. The moment Rika saw Yuta, she instantly moved to his side and clung to him. Yuta touched her head and smiled a little embarrassedly. Sorry, Rika. Then he changed the subject. How do we deal with these two people? Ishigori and Takako were shocked when they heard this and said in unison, wait. We'll give you all our points. They had seen what had happened just now. They didn't want to be burned by the strange black flames, nor did they want their necks broken by the space. Looking at the rising score on the points panel, Kazuma was stunned. Unexpectedly, these two were willing to hand over their points so readily? In the original story, these two guys were arrogant and crazy, not afraid of death. He was originally thinking of either using Tsukuyomi to conquer their spirit or just killing them. But unexpectedly, before he even opened his mouth, the two of them were so eager to hand over all their points? Aren't they going to struggle or resist? In truth, Ishigori and Takako were indeed lunatics unafraid of death. But they didn't want to suffer inhuman torture. Most importantly, they had found the motivation to continue getting stronger. And so, after this decision, Kazuma's points reached 305. Through the observation of the little golden bug, his points ranking shot from the last to the first place. Now, to maintain first place, the best way is to find Kashimo. If he could also get all of his points, he'd be basically safe. Chapter 169, Panda's Bluff. At the same time, Tokyo No. 2 Colony. Panda, who was sitting on a container, had a face full of question marks. Looking at the containers piled up all around, it took a long time for him to come back to his senses. Did I just get randomly teleported? Where is this? The dock? Where has Maki been teleported to? Forget it, let's worry about myself first. Maki is very strong now, so she shouldn't be in any trouble. After this culling game is over, he must shamelessly become Kazuma's apprentice. Even if he can't reach the heights of a heavenly restriction user, being a Kung Fu Panda is fine. But for now, he has to find Angel and unseal Gojo first. Suddenly, Panda's sensitive nose twitched, and his large eyes widened with a solemn expression. The smell of blood, an extremely heavy smell of blood. Moreover, this blood is mixed with a terrifying murderous aura. Panda, still sitting on the container, looked around nervously. With such a strong murderous aura, he immediately analyzed that at least 3 strong participants nearby had been chopped into pieces. What's even more frightening is that the aura of this murderous demon's cursed energy is extremely weak. The only explanation for this situation is that this person's control over cursed energy is near perfection. Simply put, they consume the least amount of cursed energy while dealing the highest damage. A strong person of this level is at least special grade. This damn culling game, why did he have to face a super strong opponent right away? Could it be true, as Kazuma had said, that first grades are as numerous as normal people, and special grades are everywhere? Thinking of this, the depressed Panda suddenly lost all desire to fight and simply lied flat on the container. He dared not leave, nor did he dare to stay. If he acts rashly, he will definitely be discovered by the other party. Then, what awaits him is being torn into pieces. Wait. Panda was in a dilemma, but suddenly his eyes lit up. I'm a cute panda. Why not pretend to be a harmless pet panda? That's right, he's actually a panda. Would the other party really distrust him and even want to kill an animal passing by? So, Panda made up his mind and rolled down the container skillfully. Bump! With a dull thud, he landed perfectly. Panda stood on his back legs, stretched out his arms, and looked around carefully. Once there is any sign of trouble, he will be ready in advance. However, sometimes, what you fear is bound to come true. At the corner of the container in front, a man, carrying a stick, and with a bun on his head suddenly appeared. Kashimo glanced at the panda sitting on the ground with an unimpressed look. For a moment, the atmosphere around them froze and became eerily quiet. One person and one panda, staring at each other. Kashimo said indifferently, "Hey, do you know where Sukuna is?" However, Panda seemed to not understand and was busy licking his fur. What a joke, he is an animal now. How can he answer questions from humans? Seeing this, Kashimo frowned slightly and thought to himself. It looks like this guy really is an animal. Did it run away from a zoo? Hearing this, Panda immediately acted like a normal panda in a zoo. He put all four limbs on the ground, pretended to be stupid, and crawled around. Cold sweat was pouring down his body. He had already felt the terror of the person in front of him. The killer here should be this guy with a meatball head who doesn't look too smart. What is he talking about looking for Sukuna? Is there something wrong with him? However, now, the best option is to pretend to be a pet and get away with it. Yet, the experienced Kashimo felt that something was wrong. This is a dangerous zone. How could animals possibly enter here? And even if one accidentally entered the barrier, it would not survive until today. They should have been killed by those cursed spirits that eat flesh and don't even leave any bones. Kashimo, who would not let any participant go, stretched his neck and gave a commanding order. Hey! A golden insect with a skull head, a worm body, and butterfly wings appeared before him. Is that animal across the street a participant? Panda's breathing stagnated at those words, and his fur stood on end instantly. Is he really going to be exposed? Obviously, the little golden bug, which serves as the window of culling game, will not lie. Excited words came out of its mouth. Participant. I didn't expect this little thing to have such a function. It actually saw through my disguise at a glance. Just when Panda was mentally complaining about the little golden bug's ability. The next second, Kashimo's attack was already in sight. The ghostly figure, carrying purple lightning, instantly launched an extremely swift punch. This killer, who searches for prey, did not waste a second once he locked onto his target. Bang! A punch filled Y. With cursed energy hit Panda's abdomen. Such a powerful punch. This was the first time Panda had seen one like this. Panda's body bent, his cheeks bulged, and his belly exploded from the impact. The scattering fur made Panda's eyes widen in disbelief. So fast. How could this guy be so fast? He had no time to react. And his destructive power is far beyond his expectations. The next second, the decisive and ruthless Kashimo switched from fists to his staff, grinning wildly. This was the expression he only showed when fighting. An extremely powerful stab caused Panda's body to burst out a large amount of cotton again. The unrivaled force sent Panda flying hundreds of meters. Boom! After crashing into multiple containers, Panda finally stopped. The attack just now once again made Panda realize how unique this guy was. His attack was somewhat similar to Megumi's Shikigami Nu, infused with lightning. In addition to his great power, he could paralyze the opponent's body. Moreover, his attacks ignored defense. Facing life and death, Panda took a deep breath and stared at Kashimo, who stood atop the container. Why, you don't want to pretend anymore? One last question for you. Where is Sukuna? Kashimo's words made Panda's brain work rapidly. What does this guy want with Sukuna? Could he be a follower of Sukuna, just like that sorcerer who used ice during the Shibuya incident? Or is he just a crazy fan of Sukuna? They do seem to have similar personalities. Thinking of this, Panda smiled inwardly and spoke, Sukuna is my eldest uncle, Gojo is my second uncle, Kazuma is my oldest brother. I advise you not to be too arrogant. To thrive in society, you need background and influence. No matter how good you are at fighting, you'll always be just a small fry compared to these three. After saying this, Panda felt extremely nervous. He just hoped that this crazy guy with a bun on his head knows who Gojo is. Hearing these words, Kashimo was stunned at first, then sneered and looked at Panda with gloomy eyes. Do you take me for a fool? Chapter 170, Kashimo enters Sendai. Of course, Kashimo had heard of Sukuna and Gojo. One was the strongest 1,000 years ago, and the other was the strongest today. And he was the strongest 400 years ago, believing himself to be no worse than the two. That was the purpose of his reincarnation, to challenge the strongest sorcerers of different eras. Did this stinky panda in front of him really think that name-dropping Sukuna and Gojo would scare him? The only thing he didn't understand was who this Kazuma was. Was he powerful? Why had he never heard of him before? At the mention of Sukuna and Gojo, Kashimo couldn't help but feel his blood boil. The thought of guiding the strongest made his heart race with excitement. But the panda in front of him? That was a joke. His interest disappeared immediately. Hey, panda, I'll give you one last chance. Where are Sukuna and Gojo? Either one will do. No matter who the strongest has been in the past, from now on, I am the strongest. Such bold words left the nervous panda on the opposite side stunned. What? So this ignorant guy wants to challenge Sukuna? Who gave him the courage? Could it be that he was tricked by that cunning Kenjaku? However, if this guy doesn't get the answer he wants, then he'll most likely be in serious danger. What should he do? The clever panda rubbed his chin, his mind racing. Sukuna was still dormant inside Yuji's body, he couldn't be allowed to wake up. And as for Gojo, he was still sealed in the prison realm. Just when Panda was starting to panic, a report suddenly played. Tokyo No. 1 Colony Sendai, participant Kazuma has killed the special grade cursed spirit Kurorushi and the special grade sorcerer Druvlak Dawala. Kazuma? When Kashimo heard the broadcast, a look of both confusion and excitement crossed his face. Wasn't that the name this panda had mentioned earlier? He hadn't expected that guy to actually have some strength. Taking down 2 special grade guiders alone, that was enough to qualify him as a potential rival. Wait. Suddenly, Kashimo's gaze shifted to the score panel projected by the little golden bug. As expected. He had originally been in first place, but now this guy named Kazuma had surpassed him. This damn guy. If he had encountered a special grade, there's no way he'd be in second place right now. Kashimo, who had been unstoppable 400 years ago, could not accept being ranked second, not even in a points ranking. Kazuma, awesome. Looking at the furious Kashimo, Panda's eyes flashed. Now's his chance. Placing his hands on his waist, he raised his chin slightly and gave Kashimo a smug look. Hey, bunhead, don't you want to fight the strong? My eldest brother, Kazuma, grew up with me. We're like brothers. I can take you to him. As for his strength, don't worry. He can absolutely beat you up. Then, Panda launched into an elaborate tale about how Kazuma had fought 15-finger Sukuna and sparred with Gojo. A mix of truth and exaggeration. But that's exactly what was needed. As long as he could fully capture this guy's interest, his life would be spared. As for using Kazuma as bait? Well, worst case, he could apologize to him later. Besides, this could help Kazuma rack up some extra points, right? This killer was attacking everyone in sight, so he must have accumulated quite a bit of them. Kazuma's strength was unfathomable, so he stood a far better chance against this guy. Not to mention, if Panda remembered correctly, Yuta was also in Sendai. Panda grinned, laughing in his heart. Wait for death, you murderous bunhead. Kashimo, standing on the container, was not angry at all. Instead, he showed rare patience, folding his arms and listening with interest. So, this Kazuma guy. Your brother is also a panda? Panda's mouth twitched. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. Kashimo curled his lips impatiently and said, "Lead the way. If you dare lie to me, I will tear you apart." His glare was sharp. Even though he now knew Kazuma was in Sendai, not far away, each colony was massive. Without an exact location, searching would be like groping in the dark. Meanwhile, Tokyo's first colony, Sendai City Center. The battlefield, once filled with brutal fighting, had fallen into an eerie silence. Toji was unstoppable. With a long sword in hand, he attacked with precision, muttering strange words like, "I will only hit the head this time." A skinny boy advanced through the battlefield, a terrifying special-grade curse trailing behind him. And then there was the yellow ash, flickering across the city like a phantom. At this moment, both the reincarnated sorcerers and the cursed spirits, those who had once terrorized others, were now cowering in the shadows, trembling in fear. Clang! A dagger was embedded into the rooftop of an office building. Kazuma appeared in an instant, his sharp gaze scanning the scene below. He had searched every inch of this barrier. And there was no sign of Kashimo. Even worse, his memory was hazy. Where was Kashimo supposed to be according to the original timeline? He couldn't remember exactly. But he did recall one thing: Panda might be in trouble. And soon, the gambler Hikari would make his move. He would cheat fate within his idle death gamble and defeat Kashimo, who refused to unleash his ultimate technique. After all, Mythical Beast Amber was a move that could only be activated once in a lifetime. A trump card Kashimo had been saving for Sukuna. Judging by the timeline, Maki should also be encountering Naoya, who is transformed into a vengeful cursed spirit. But that wasn't a concern. Maki would still kill Naoya, just like before. And with the 8 inner gates, she might even do it more easily this time. Thinking of it, Kazuma couldn't help but pity Naoya. Of all people, why choose to mess with a heavenly restriction user? His fate was sealed the moment he had picked that fight. He would die twice, both times by Maki's hand, his eyes wide open in disbelief. Just as Kazuma debated whether to spend 100 points to cross into another colony, a sudden announcement rang out. Participant Kashimo has spent 100 points to cross the barrier and arrive at Sendai. This news spread instantly across the battlefield. Below, Toji, drenched in blood, wiped his blade clean and lazily looked up. Kashimo? He came from another colony? Does he know where Megumi is? On the other side, Yuta stopped mid-battle, his expression serious. It's him. Ishigori told me this guy was the strongest sorcerer 400 years ago. Did he come here because he wiped out all the participants in his colony? And does he know where Angel is? Either way, it is worth investigating. Yuta's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Rika, let's go. The Queen of Curses smiled, nodding obediently. I will go wherever Yuta goes. That wraps up this part of What If Ninja in Jujutsu Kaisen. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.